Hey guys, my name is Batimio, and today I decided to do something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time now, and you guys have also been requesting this, and that is to create a list of the weapons that I think are some of the best for each of the classes and for different types of playstyle, but also some of the weapons that you should avoid for each of the classes. And so for today, I'm going to start off with the Engineer class. I find that the personal defense weapons are some of the most unique in the game. They have very unique attributes and characteristics that results in some awesome gameplay, and so I thought that this would be a good starting point. And so all of the PDWs are pretty much fantastic for close encounter combat. Like, all of them have amazing hipfire accuracy, all of them usually have a very high rounds per minute, and for the most part you're going to want to use these up close and personal. But to start off, we're going to go with the best, or what I consider to be the best high rate of fire personal defense weapons in the game, and honestly the one that takes the crown has to be the CZ3A1. This weapon is phenomenal, and it really just comes down to the fact that it has 31 rounds in its magazine, on top of the fact that it has a rounds per minute of 1,000. To give you a perspective on this, the FAMAS for the assault class, the highest RPM assault rifle in the game, also has an RPM of 1,000, but it only has 26 rounds in its magazine. And so in my opinion, the CZ3A1 is basically the FAMAS for the assault class, but for the Engineer, but with a couple extra rounds in its magazine. And so basically, if you want to kill people really quickly, the CZ3A1 is easily one of the best personal defense weapons in the game to get the job done. It does have a lot of recoil, so that is one thing that you do have to work around. It has one of the highest first shot recoils in the game, but as long as you're able to get a couple hundred kills under your belt, you start to use the weapon more often, it is easily one of the best close encounter weapons in the game. But if the CZ3A1 isn't your fancy, then I recommend trying out the SR2. It doesn't have as high of a rounds per minute. It comes in at 900, which is still blazing fast. You're still going to kill your enemies ridiculously quickly, but it has a much easier recoil to control. Its first shot is nowhere near as high as the CZ3A1. The downside of it, though, is that it does have a much longer reload speed. To go through the short animation, if you still had a bolt in the chamber before you click the reload button, is going to take you 2.6 seconds to go through that animation, but the long is going to take you 3.5 seconds. And because this is a high rounds per minute weapon, you're going to probably be going through that long animation every once in a while. And so if you're not careful with it, it is going to leave you a little vulnerable at times. And compared to the CZ3A1, it actually has one of the fastest reload speeds for the personal defense weapons. I should have mentioned this before, but it has a short reload time of 1.9 seconds, which is just crazy fast, but its long reload time is actually just as fast, or actually it's faster than the CZ3A1 short reload time, coming in at 2.4 seconds. Another great aspect of the CZ3A1. The next category we're going to look at is hipfire weapons, and admittedly this one was a little hard to nail down because really all of the PDWs for the Engineer class have amazing hipfire accuracy, but in my opinion the one that takes the cake is the MP7. It doesn't actually have the best hipfire accuracy in the game. That actually goes to the P90 and I believe the PDWR, but what I like about it so much is that it has a blazing fast rounds per minute. It has a rounds per minute of 950, but it also has 41 rounds in its magazine. And so if you round the corner, you see a bunch of enemies, you can basically just spray and pray all over the place, and you're going to have the hipfire accuracy, the RPM, and the bullet to take all of them out. The downside of it, though, is that it does have a reduced damage model. It is only going to do 20 damage per shot up close and then drop off to 11.2 at long range. And so basically what this means is that you are going to have to put 5 bullets in your enemy within 10 meters. And so for some situations that can get you killed, because one extra bullet could be the difference between life and death, especially if you're going against someone who is using an SR2 or the CZ3A1. But once again, for hipfire potential and just hipfire fun, I think the MP7 is the best in the game. The next category that I basically just made up is weapons that I find to be awesome, like simply amazing, but can take some time getting used to. And really, it's just the AS-Val. Like, the AS-Val is one of the most unique guns for the Engineer class, and honestly, for pretty much all of the weapons in the game, and it comes down to the fact that it has a crazy damage model. It does 30 damage per shot up close, and then drops off to 16 at long range, but what this means is that its 4-shot killing potential extends to around 25 meters away from your enemy. That's pretty much different from every weapon in the game. Like most weapons, their 4-shot killing potential is within 10 meters. Anything further than that, it's going to require 5 bullets. But for the AS-Val, that is not the case. And so what makes it so unique is it has a high RPM, 900 rounds per minute, so it kills people very quickly. But if you're able to work around the map in such a way where you can get your enemy within 10 to 25 meters out, kind of in that medium to short range, if you can get your enemy within those situations, you're going to have the advantage over them. Even if they're using like the CZ3A1, they're using a FAMAS with a high rounds per minute and a decent damage model, you're going to be able to kill them quicker because it only requires 1 less bullet for you to destroy them. And that's what makes the AS-Val so awesome. The downside of it though, and what makes it a little tricky, is it only has 21 rounds in its magazine. And so if you are not careful with this weapon, you are not conservative with your ammunition, and your accuracy is not true, you're going to have a hard time going on kill streaks. And especially if 2 people around the corner, you're probably not going to come out of it alive if you are not 100% awesome with your accuracy. The next gun I've selected for this category is the UMP-45. I adore this personal defense weapon, and while I would not say it's the hardest to master, nowhere near as difficult as the AS-Val, it's a little tricky at first to get used to, and it really comes down to the fact that it has a low RPM for a personal defense weapon. Its RPM only comes at 600, but what's nice about it is that it has the highest damage model out of all of the PDWs. It has 34 damage per shot up close and then drops off to 15.4 at long range. And what's unique about the UMP-45 is that it's not meant for long range combat. Like you would assume with that high damage model and with that low rounds per minute that it would be kick-ass at a distance, but that's not the case. Like you still want to use this up close. And that's where the tricky aspect of the weapon comes into play, because if you go up close against someone who is using a high RPM weapon and you don't land all of your shots, doesn't matter if you have a higher damage model, they're going to blow you out of the water. And so it basically forces you to be amazing with your accuracy. Like they have a lot more room for error, you don't have as much room for error. You need to make sure that all of your bullets are landing, but if you are making sure all of your bullets land, this is a very rewarding gun. And so in my opinion, this gun alongside the AS-Val, while they're a little tricky to get used to at first, once you start to master them, once you get the hang of the tricks and the uniqueness of them, they are some of the most rewarding guns in the game. Now, the last category that I wanted to take a look at today are the ones that I find to be a little lacking. You may want to avoid them. They're still good. You can still do reasonably well, especially if it's your go-to gun and you've mastered it. Like, don't get me wrong, this is not a personal attack by any means, but if you want to be competitive, these are the ones that you probably want to avoid a little bit. And so the first one that has to go on my list is the CBJMS. This thing was miserable. It had a low rounds per minute, it had a low damage model. Like honestly, before the recent update, it was probably one of the worst weapons in the game. It did not outperform any gun in Battlefield 4. DICE realized their mistake. They did give it some love in a recent update, but even still, even with the damage increase that they gave it, it just feels a little lackluster. It does have 51 rounds in its magazine, and so if you do catch your enemies by surprise, you round the corner and about 5 guys don't have their back to you, you do have the magazine size to maybe take all of them out, especially if they're terrible. But even still, even with that high magazine size, because its damage model isn't awesome and it has such a low rounds per minute, I find it to be a pretty mediocre weapon. The last one on my list was a no-brainer, and that has to go to the MX4. I don't know what it is about this weapon. Its stats are okay, but every single time I pick it up, I do terribly. It's got a decent rounds per minute. It clocks in at 830, which is okay. You know, that's pretty fast. But you would assume that with a lower RPM compared to the awesome RPM weapons for the engineer class, that its recoil pattern would be more manageable. But that's not the case with the MX4. It's gonna bounce a lot. It's got the standard damage model. Its reload speed is mediocre. It's only got 31 rounds in its magazine. And so I guess for a starter weapon, it's decent. It's going to get the job done and allow you to at least get some kills so you can start to unlock all the other weapons. But once you start to get like the UMP-45 unlocked or really any other PDW, I would stray away from the MX4. But yeah, that is my list of what I believe to be some of the best guns for the engineer class in some of the categories that I basically just made up in the spot, so I hope you enjoyed. But let me know what you thought of this list. Are there some guns that you would have added? Are there some that you would have removed? What is your favorite weapon weapon for the engineer kit in Battlefield 4, let me know down below. But yeah, guys, until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.